close your eyes for a moment and allow the sounds of the modern world to fade into the distance. Imagine that the year is 1348. The glow of electric lights has never existed. The comforting hum of machines is unknown. The only light guiding your evening comes from a single candle, its small flame dancing gently in the darkness as a cool wind slips beneath a heavy wooden door. You live in a quiet medieval town somewhere in England. Narrow streets twist between timber-framed houses. The scent of damp earth lingers after a recent rain, blending with wood smoke rising from nearby hearths. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell slowly marks the passing of another hour. A horse pulls a creaking cart across uneven stones, its wheels groaning softly before disappearing into the night. Everything feels slower here. Everything feels quieter. And yet, beneath this peaceful silence, countless worries wait patiently for tomorrow. Among them is one fear that nearly every person shares, whether they are a farmer, a merchant, a noble, or a wandering pilgrim. It begins as a dull ache. Perhaps after biting into a hard crust of bread. Perhaps after chewing salted meat that has become tougher with each passing winter. Perhaps for no reason anyone can understand. At first, the pain seems small enough to ignore. But over days, then weeks, it grows. Every meal becomes difficult. Every sip of cold water feels like a tiny blade touching an exposed nerve. Sleep becomes lighter. Conversations become shorter. Even smiling becomes something to avoid. Today, if a tooth begins to ache, many of us simply schedule a visit to a dentist. Bright lights, sterile tools, gentle anesthetics, and modern medicine make the experience uncomfortable, perhaps, but usually safe. In the Middle Ages, none of those comforts existed. The person waiting to remove your aching tooth might never have studied medicine. They might spend one day cutting hair, the next day shaving beards, and later that afternoon pulling teeth in a crowded marketplace while curious strangers gathered to watch. There would be no numbing injection, no antibiotics waiting afterward, no guarantee that the tooth causing your misery would even be the one removed. Tonight, we travel into that forgotten world. A world where courage often meant sitting perfectly still, while someone reached into your mouth with heavy iron tools. A world where a simple toothache could quietly change the course of an entire life. I'm Kushi, and this is Sleepy History. As you settle comfortably beneath your blanket, let your breathing slow. There is nowhere you need to be, no tasks waiting for your attention. Simply allow this journey through history to unfold at its own gentle pace. If your eyes become heavy, that is perfectly all right. If you drift asleep before our story ends, history will patiently wait for you tomorrow. Now, let us begin. Imagine walking slowly along a medieval street just after sunset. The air is cool. The sky has turned a deep shade of blue, with only a faint ribbon of orange lingering near the horizon. Tiny stars begin appearing one by one above the rooftops. The streets are far darker than anything we know today. Without electric lamps, darkness arrives quickly and completely. Only candles glowing behind small windows and the occasional torch outside a busy tavern interrupt the shadows. You hear footsteps echo softly across wet stones. A woman carries a basket of vegetables toward home. Two monks quietly pass each other without speaking. A sleepy dog curls itself beside a doorway. Smoke rises gently into the evening sky, carrying the comforting smell of burning oak. Somewhere nearby, fresh bread is baking. Nearby, another smell competes with it. Leather. Animals. Wet wool. Open drains running beside the road. The Middle Ages were beautiful in some moments. They were unpleasant in many others. Life was deeply connected to nature. People rose with the sun, worked until dusk, and rested when darkness finally claimed the sky. There were no glowing screens demanding attention. No buzzing phones. No endless stream of news. Only seasons. Weather. Harvests. faith, and survival. Now imagine stepping inside a modest wooden home. The ceiling is low. The floor is packed earth. A small fire crackles inside the hearth, sending gentle warmth through the room. A pot of thick vegetable stew hangs above the flames. Simple wooden bowls rest on a rough table. A cat quietly washes its paws near the fire, while children sleep together beneath heavy wool blankets stuffed with straw. It almost feels peaceful, until someone reaches for their jaw. An ache. Sharp. Persistent. Impossible to ignore. The family knows what it means. Tooth pain. No one says much. Everyone has seen it before. Perhaps it will fade. Perhaps it will grow worse. Perhaps tomorrow they will visit the barber surgeon. Perhaps tomorrow the tooth will be gone, along with part of the jaw. No one truly knows. Medical knowledge during much of medieval Europe mixed observation with tradition, religion, superstition, and ancient beliefs passed from generation to generation. Some treatments genuinely helped. Others simply offered hope. Many caused more suffering than the illness itself. Yet people trusted what little knowledge existed. After all, there were few alternatives. Imagine lying awake long after everyone else has fallen asleep. Outside, the wind gently brushes against wooden shutters. Rain begins tapping softly across the roof. The fire has almost burned itself into glowing embers. Still, the pain refuses to sleep. Each heartbeat seems to pulse directly inside your aching tooth. You press your hand against your cheek. You whisper a quiet prayer. Morning cannot arrive quickly enough. Across medieval Europe, countless people experience this exact moment. Kings, queens, blacksmiths, millers, farmers, children, monks. Everyone had teeth. Everyone feared losing them. Unlike today, daily meals often wore teeth down surprisingly quickly. Bread frequently contained tiny grains of stone, left behind by grinding wheels. Each bite slowly scraped away enamel over many years. Sugar was rare for most people, but poor dental hygiene, infections, injuries, and constant wear created problems of their own. Few people understood exactly why teeth decayed. Many believed mysterious creatures, called tooth worms, burrowed inside aching teeth. The strange idea existed in different forms across many cultures and survived for centuries because pain itself seemed mysterious. Without microscopes, without bacteria, without modern science, people searched for explanations wherever they could find them. Sometimes they found answers in religion, sometimes in folklore, sometimes in imagination. As the night deepens around our story, allow yourself to picture another quiet village. A narrow stream flows gently nearby. Owls call softly from ancient oak trees. Mist settles across open fields like a pale blanket. Inside every home, someone worries about tomorrow's work. Someone wonders whether winter stores will last. Someone hopes their child recovers from illness. Someone silently wishes the pain in their mouth will disappear before sunrise. History often tells us about great battles, powerful kings, magnificent castles, famous victories. But ordinary people rarely worried about becoming legends. They worried about surviving another day, finding enough food, keeping warm, protecting family, and enduring pain that modern medicine could now relieve within minutes. That is one of the quiet lessons hidden inside medieval history. Life was rarely comfortable, yet people adapted with remarkable resilience. They laughed, celebrated weddings, raised children, shared stories around fires, played music, fell in love, built communities, even while carrying burdens that would seem unimaginable today. As your breathing grows slower Imagine hearing another church bell drifting through the cool night air. Its low tone rolls gently across fields and rooftops before fading into silence once again. The town sleeps. Tomorrow, market stalls will open. Farmers will gather. Merchants will bargain. Children will chase one another through muddy streets. And somewhere among the crowds, a man with iron instruments will quietly prepare for another day's work. Some will know him as a barber. Others will call him a surgeon. A few will simply know him as the man who can end unbearable pain. Or perhaps create even more. His tools are simple. His knowledge is limited. His confidence often exceeds his understanding. Yet desperate people continue arriving at his door. Because when every heartbeat feels like another stab of pain inside an infected tooth, almost any hope feels worth chasing. But this is only the beginning of our journey. Soon, we will step inside the strange world of medieval dentistry itself, where barber surgeons, wandering tooth pullers, curious remedies, and frightening instruments became part of everyday life. And as we discover what truly happened when someone sat down for a medieval tooth extraction, we may find that the greatest fear was not the pain itself, but everything that came afterward. The morning arrives slowly, almost unnoticed. A pale gray light begins to spread across the horizon, washing away the darkness that covered the medieval town throughout the night. The streets are still quiet. A few chickens wander between puddles left behind by yesterday's rain. Smoke rises lazily from stone chimneys as families prepare simple breakfasts of coarse bread and thin porridge. For a brief moment, everything feels peaceful, but not for you. The ache in your jaw never disappeared. Instead, it has grown heavier through the night. Your cheek feels warm and swollen. Even opening your mouth requires effort. Speaking has become uncomfortable. Eating seems almost impossible. You know what today must bring. You must visit the man everyone talks about, not because they trust him, because they have no one else. As you wrap a thick wool cloak around your shoulders, you quietly step outside. The morning air is cool, carrying the scent of damp wood, fresh hay, and distant fireplaces. Every step across the uneven stone road sends a gentle vibration through your aching jaw. You try not to think about it. Instead, you focus on the sounds around you. A blacksmith's hammer rings softly somewhere beyond the market square. A milkmaid leads 2 cows toward the village green. A merchant carefully arranges cloth imported from distant lands. Life continues as though nothing is wrong. Only you know how much pain you carry. As you approach the marketplace, more people begin filling the narrow streets. Some are buying vegetables. Others trade wool, leather, or pottery. Children laugh while chasing each other around wooden carts. Yet near one corner of the square, a small crowd has already gathered. No music plays there. No colorful fabrics attract customers. Instead, curious faces form a quiet circle around a single wooden chair. You have arrived, the medieval dentist. Although calling him a dentist would surprise the people standing nearby, most would simply know him as a barber surgeon. His striped pole, hanging outside his small shop or resting beside his chair, represents 2 very different professions. One hand trims beards, the other removes teeth. Today, the shaving tools remain neatly arranged. The heavier iron instruments lie waiting beside them. They catch the morning sunlight with a cold metallic shine. You hesitate. Perhaps the pain will disappear tomorrow. Perhaps another herbal remedy will work. Perhaps another prayer will bring relief. But another sharp pulse spreads through your jaw, answering every hopeful thought. There will be no miracle today, only choices, and none of them seem pleasant. The barber surgeon notices you waiting. He nods calmly. His face shows little emotion. This is ordinary work for him. He has seen frightened faces countless times before: old farmers, young mothers, traveling merchants, even noblemen when they happen to pass through town. Pain does not care about wealth. Everyone eventually finds themselves sitting in the same chair. You step closer. The chair itself is simple. Heavy oak, no soft cushion, no adjustable headrest, no bright examination light, only daylight, only wood, only iron. The barber surgeon asks a few brief questions. Which tooth hurts? How long has it been painful? Can you still chew? His examination lasts only moments. He gently presses against your swollen cheek. You flinch immediately. He nods again. That tells him enough. There are no x-rays, no mirrors designed for careful inspection, no photographs, No detailed medical records, only experience. Sometimes that experience is surprisingly useful. Sometimes it leads to terrible mistakes. During much of medieval Europe, dentistry was not considered its own profession. Universities focused mainly on physicians, whose education emphasized ancient writings rather than practical surgery. Tasks involving blood, bones, wounds, and teeth often belonged to barber surgeons instead. These practical workers learned through observation and apprenticeship rather than long academic study. Some became remarkably skilled. Others possessed little more than confidence and strong hands. There was enormous variation from one town to another. A fortunate village might have an experienced practitioner. Another might rely on someone whose knowledge barely exceeded guesswork. That uncertainty followed every patient. As you sit down, another person quietly waits nearby. An elderly woman wraps a cloth around her jaw. A young laborer keeps one hand pressed firmly against his mouth. No one speaks much. Pain has a way of making conversation unnecessary. The barber surgeon reaches toward a wooden box resting beside the chair. Inside are his instruments: forceps, pelicans, dental keys, small knives, metal probes. Each tool has been shaped by blacksmiths rather than medical factories. Some look surprisingly elegant. Others appear almost frightening. Their polished surfaces reflect flickering sunlight. You cannot help wondering how many mouths they have entered before yours. Sterilization, as we understand it today, does not yet exist. The tools may have been wiped clean, perhaps rinsed with water, sometimes washed in wine or vinegar. People believed these substances possessed cleansing qualities. Occasionally they helped. Often they did not. No one yet understands invisible bacteria. No one realizes how easily infection travels from one patient to another. Instead, illness remains mysterious. Sometimes people recover. Sometimes they grow terribly sick afterward. The reasons remain hidden. As your breathing grows slower, imagine the quiet rhythm of the marketplace continuing around you. Life refuses to pause for anyone's suffering. Nearby, a baker sells warm loaves. A horse snorts impatiently beside its cart. Church bells announce another passing hour. Somewhere, children laugh. Only a few feet away, someone prepares to lose a tooth. That strange contrast filled medieval life. Joy and hardship stood side by side every single day. The barber surgeon selects one instrument. It resembles large iron pincers, heavy, cold, simple. There is no comforting explanation, no lengthy discussion of possible treatments. The infected tooth must come out, or at least, that is what he believes. Extraction is often the quickest answer available. Saving damaged teeth rarely enters the conversation. Modern fillings, root canals, crowns, and advanced restorations belong to a future nobody can yet imagine. For medieval patients, preserving a tooth is often impossible. Removing it seems far more practical. Whether that decision proves wise, only time will tell. Around Europe, many different remedies had already been attempted before people finally reached this chair. Some rinsed their mouths with herbal mixtures made from sage, mint, or rosemary. Others chewed cloves when available. Honey sometimes covered inflamed gums because its soothing qualities had long been observed. Prayers were whispered, relics visited, charms carried beneath clothing. Ancient medical texts suggested countless combinations of herbs, oils, minerals, and unusual ingredients. Some genuinely reduced discomfort. Many accomplished little when everything else failed. People came here, to the barber surgeon, not because he promised comfort, because he promised action. For many families, even deciding to seek treatment required careful thought. Money was limited. Time away from work meant smaller harvests or fewer coins earned. A painful tooth had to become truly unbearable before many people accepted the risk of extraction. That delay often allowed infections to spread further. Swelling increased. Fever sometimes appeared. Simple dental problems quietly transformed into life-threatening illnesses. Today, antibiotics stop many infections before they become dangerous. In the Middle Ages, the human body fought largely alone. Sometimes it won, sometimes it lost. The barber surgeon adjusts his grip. He studies your face carefully, not out of cruelty, out of concentration. He knows that one careless movement could snap the tooth. A broken root creates even greater difficulty. Without modern lighting, without specialized equipment, every extraction demands patience and physical strength. His apprentice watches silently from nearby. Young boys often learned this trade by observing hundreds of procedures before attempting one themselves. Knowledge passed from hand to hand rather than through printed textbooks. Experience became the greatest teacher. Mistakes became unforgettable lessons. Around you, the crowd has grown slightly larger. Public medical procedures were not unusual. People watched. Some hoped to learn. Others simply found them fascinating. Entertainment looked very different in medieval towns. A tooth extraction could easily attract curious onlookers. You lower your eyes. Perhaps it feels easier not to see them. The cool morning breeze brushes gently across your face. You take one slow breath, then another. The barber surgeon positions the iron instrument. Everything becomes strangely quiet. Even the marketplace seems farther away. Your entire world narrows to one aching tooth, one pair of rough hands, one heavy tool, one uncertain outcome. Few moments in medieval life inspired as much dread as this one. Yet thousands of ordinary people faced it every year. Not heroes, not kings, simply mothers, fathers, farmers, monks, travelers, children, people whose names history has long forgotten. They endured because there was no alternative. And as frightening as this moment already feels, the most difficult part of the story has not yet begun. Because in the next chapter, we will discover what actually happened when those cold iron tools finally closed around a medieval tooth, and why the extraction itself was often only the beginning of a far greater ordeal. You remain perfectly still. The cool morning air brushes gently across your face, but your attention is fixed on the heavy iron tool resting inside your mouth. The barber surgeon pauses for only a moment, adjusting his grip before beginning the work that has become so familiar to him. For you, this is one of the most frightening moments of your life. For him, it is simply another morning. Across medieval Europe, thousands of people earned their living with their hands. Blacksmiths shaped iron, cobblers repaired worn shoes, bakers filled the streets with the smell of fresh bread, and barber surgeons quietly occupied a unique place between everyday craftsmen and medical practitioners. They were expected to do many jobs. 1 hour they might carefully trim a merchant's beard. The next, they could be treating a deep cut received during farm work. Later that afternoon, they might remove an arrow from a soldier's shoulder or pull an infected tooth from a frightened child. It seems like an unusual combination today. But during the Middle Ages, practical skills mattered more than formal job titles. The famous red and white barber pole that still survives in many places today has roots stretching back hundreds of years. Many historians believe the red stripes represented blood, while the white symbolized clean bandages. Some versions even included blue, representing veins or the cloth used during medical procedures. Although the meaning evolved over time, the pole quietly reminds us that barbers once did far more than cut hair. They were among the few people willing to perform procedures involving blood and pain. As you sit in the wooden chair, imagine the barber surgeon's own daily routine. He rises before sunrise, sharpens his blades, checks his instruments, sweeps yesterday's dust from the floor. Perhaps he says a quiet prayer that today's work will go smoothly. He understands something few others do. Every patient arrives afraid. Some try to hide it, others cannot. Children cling tightly to their parents. Strong laborers suddenly become silent. Even wealthy nobles often tremble when they recognize the iron tools waiting nearby. Pain has always been one of history's great equalizers. Money can purchase larger homes, finer clothing, better horses, but an infected tooth pays little attention to social status. Kings suffered, queens suffered, farmers suffered, monks suffered. Everyone eventually discovered that the smallest part of the human body could produce astonishing misery. You hear another church bell echo softly through the town. Outside, merchants continue selling vegetables, cloth, candles, and salted fish. The ordinary rhythm of life continues while extraordinary discomfort unfolds inside this small workshop. There is something strangely peaceful about that contrast. History rarely stopped for individual suffering. Harvests still needed gathering. Animals still required feeding. Children still needed caring for. Even those carrying terrible pain often returned to work the very next day because survival demanded it. The barber surgeon carefully studies your mouth again. Without modern lighting, every examination depends on natural daylight. He gently tilts your head toward the window. Sunlight slips across your face, allowing him a clearer view. There are no tiny cameras, no digital scanners, no detailed images revealing hidden damage beneath the gums. Only what the human eye can see, only what experienced hands can feel. Sometimes that was enough, sometimes it was not. People living during the Middle Ages accepted uncertainty as part of everyday life. Illness appeared without warning. Storms destroyed crops. Winters lasted longer than expected. Infections spread quickly. Medical treatment offered hope, but never certainty. Perhaps that is why faith occupied such an important place in daily existence. When answers remained hidden, prayer often filled the silence. Many patients whispered quiet prayers before sitting in the barber surgeon's chair. Some carried small religious charms. Others visited shrines dedicated to saints believed to protect the sick. Among them was Saint Apollonia, remembered in Christian tradition as the patron saint of people suffering from tooth pain. Images of her often showed a tooth held gently with pincers. For countless medieval families, simply looking upon such an image offered comfort. Whether the pain disappeared or not, hope itself carried great value. The barber surgeon reaches toward another instrument resting beside him. Unlike modern dental equipment, these tools are large and heavy. Each one has been designed more for strength than precision. Iron is difficult to shape into delicate forms. As a result, medieval dental instruments often appear surprisingly rugged. One particularly famous tool was known as the dental pelican. Its curved shape resembled the beak of the bird that gave it its name. When used correctly, it could remove certain teeth with impressive speed. When used poorly, it could damage nearby teeth, injure the gums, or even fracture part of the jaw. Its success depended almost entirely upon the experience of the person holding it. Imagine trusting your future health to that uncertainty. Some barber surgeons became highly respected throughout their regions. Travelers journeyed many miles seeking their help. Their reputations spread through word of mouth rather than printed advertisements. A successful extraction earned gratitude. A failed one became a warning shared across neighboring villages. In time, certain practitioners developed remarkable practical knowledge despite lacking formal medical education. Others never improved beyond basic techniques. No official standards guaranteed quality. Every patient accepted a measure of risk. You notice a small wooden shelf nearby. Tiny jars rest upon it. Each contains herbs gathered from fields and forests: mint, sage, chamomile, rosemary. Some are dried carefully for winter. Others have been mixed into oils or simple pastes. Herbal medicine formed an important part of medieval healthcare. Many plants genuinely possessed soothing or cleansing properties, even if people did not fully understand why. Nature often provided relief long before science explained its effects. Not every treatment relied upon iron tools. Sometimes warm herbal rinses eased inflamed gums. Sometimes clove oil reduced discomfort. Honey occasionally protected damaged tissue thanks to its natural antibacterial qualities, though medieval people described its benefits in very different language. Observation came first. Scientific explanation would arrive centuries later. Outside the workshop, a gentle breeze stirs colorful banners hanging above the marketplace. Clouds drift slowly across the summer sky. Life remains beautiful despite its hardships. That quiet beauty appears again and again throughout medieval history. People planted gardens, sang songs, celebrated festivals, shared evening meals beside warm fires. Even during difficult times, ordinary happiness found room to exist. As you settle deeper into this story, perhaps your own breathing has become slower. Perhaps your blanket feels a little warmer. Allow the sounds of this imagined town to remain softly in the background. There is no hurry. History unfolds one quiet step at a time. The barber surgeon finally speaks. His voice remains calm. He tells you the tooth cannot remain where it is. The infection will only worsen. You nod silently. Deep inside, you already knew the answer. Sometimes the hardest conversations require very few words. Nearby, his young apprentice watches every movement. He studies the position of the hands, the angle of the instrument, the careful placement before each pull. This is how knowledge survives across generations, not through universities alone, but through observation, practice, failure, correction, and patience. Years from now, that apprentice may have his own workshop, his own patients, his own frightened visitors sitting in the same wooden chair. History often grows through small moments like these, one person teaching another, one skill quietly passing into the future. Across Europe, wandering tooth pullers also traveled from town to town. Unlike permanent barber surgeons, these men often appeared during busy market days or seasonal fairs. They attracted crowds with loud voices, colorful clothing, and dramatic promises. Some even hired musicians to gather larger audiences before beginning extractions. Their confidence inspired trust, sometimes deserved, sometimes not. A successful tooth puller left behind grateful customers. An unsuccessful one simply continued traveling until reaching another town. Their lives were uncertain, following dusty roads through changing seasons, rain, snow, summer heat, autumn winds, always searching for the next marketplace, always hopping enough people needed their services. It was a difficult life, yet an important one. Many remote villages had little access to regular medical care. Traveling practitioners became the only option available. As afternoon sunlight slowly shifts across the workshop floor, the barber-surgeon wipes his instrument with a clean cloth. He takes one final look at the aching tooth. Soon, there will be no turning back. But before we witness what happened during a medieval tooth extraction, there is another hidden chapter waiting in the shadows. Because removing the tooth was not always the greatest danger, sometimes the days that followed proved even more frightening. Without antibiotics, without sterile surgical rooms, without modern understanding of infection, a single successful extraction could still become the beginning of an entirely different struggle. And that quiet, invisible danger is where our story will travel next. The barber-surgeon takes one slow breath. The workshop has grown strangely quiet. Outside, the lively sounds of the marketplace continue as they always have. Merchants bargain over sacks of grain. A cart rattles across uneven stones. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs before being called back by a patient mother. Inside this small wooden room, however, time seems to move differently. Every eye is fixed upon a single chair, a single patient, a single aching tooth. You tighten your fingers around the worn wooden armrests. The smooth surface beneath your hands has been polished by countless others who sat here before you, each leaving behind invisible traces of fear, hope, and determination. The barber-surgeon gently positions the iron forceps around the damaged tooth. There is no countdown, no reassuring promise that everything will be over quickly, only a quiet nod. And then, the work begins. Unlike modern dentistry, medieval tooth extraction depended almost entirely upon physical strength, steady hands, and experience. The instruments offered little precision by today's standards. Every movement required careful judgment. The barber-surgeon slowly rocks the tooth from side to side. Not violently, patiently. He knows that forcing it too quickly could cause it to break. A broken tooth presents an entirely new problem. Fragments buried beneath the gum become difficult to remove. Without modern surgical equipment, even locating the remaining pieces may prove nearly impossible. Many practitioners understood this through long experience. They worked slowly whenever circumstances allowed. Although stories often portray medieval medicine as endlessly brutal, reality was sometimes more complicated. Many barber surgeons genuinely wished to reduce suffering. Their knowledge was limited. Their tools were primitive. But compassion was not entirely absent. A skilled practitioner valued patience. A careless one valued speed. The difference between those two approaches could determine whether a patient recovered comfortably or carried complications for months. As you remain seated, the pressure inside your jaw steadily increases. Your breathing grows shallow. The room feels smaller than before. The smell of burning wood from the nearby fireplace mixes with beeswax candles and freshly cut herbs drying from wooden rafters above. It is an ordinary room. Yet for you, it has become the center of the world. Outside these walls, life continues without interruption. Inside them, every heartbeat seems louder than the last. Eventually, the damaged tooth begins to loosen. The barber-surgeon notices the tiny movement immediately. His grip changes slightly, one final careful motion, then the resistance suddenly disappears. The tooth is free. He quietly places it onto the small wooden table beside him. There is no celebration, only relief. For a brief moment, you simply breathe. The aching pressure that haunted you for weeks has changed. Not vanished completely, but changed. The infected tooth is gone, unfortunately. The story does not end there. Modern patients often leave the dentist with detailed instructions, sterile gauze, pain medication, antibiotics when necessary, and a clear understanding of how healing should progress. A medieval patient received something very different. The barber-surgeon carefully folds a small piece of clean linen. He instructs you to bite down firmly. Pressure helps slow the bleeding. This simple technique remains surprisingly familiar even today. Some medical knowledge has survived across centuries because it genuinely worked. Beyond that, advice varied greatly. Some practitioners recommended warm wine, others suggested herbal rinses, some encouraged complete rest, others believed returning to work immediately strengthened the body. Medical understanding differed widely from town to town. There was no universal agreement. As you leave the chair, another patient quietly steps forward. An elderly farmer removes his cap. His swollen cheek tells its own story before he speaks a single word. The barber surgeon gives him the same calm nod. Another extraction, another ordinary day. Pain rarely waited politely. Every season brought new patients. Hard bread gradually wore teeth down. Small cracks became larger. Minor infections spread. Accidents happened during farming, blacksmithing, carpentry, and countless other trades. Medieval life placed enormous demands upon the human body. Dental problems became almost unavoidable. As you slowly step back into the marketplace, sunlight now shines brightly overhead. The warmth feels comforting against your face. You instinctively avoid touching the empty space inside your mouth. Everything feels unfamiliar. Even speaking seems strange. Nearby, people continue buying vegetables without noticing what has just happened inside the workshop. Perhaps that is one of history's quietest truths. Every ordinary crowd contains invisible stories. Someone has received wonderful news. Someone mourns a loved one. Someone carries silent pain behind a gentle smile. The medieval marketplace was no different. Hundreds of individual lives crossed paths each day, each carrying worries unseen by everyone else. As the afternoon passes, you begin the slow walk home. Each careful step feels easier than yesterday. Yet a new concern quietly replaces the old one. Will the wound heal? No one can answer with certainty. This uncertainty followed nearly every medical procedure during the Middle Ages. Without understanding microscopic infection, people relied heavily upon observation. If redness appeared, if swelling increased, if fever developed. They recognized danger, even if they could not explain its cause. Sometimes the body healed beautifully, sometimes it did not. One small extraction occasionally led to serious illness. An infection spreading through the bloodstream could become life-threatening. Today, antibiotics interrupt many of these dangerous processes before they become severe. Centuries ago, the human immune system stood almost entirely alone. Nature decided much of the outcome. Interestingly, medieval people paid close attention to cleanliness within the limits of their knowledge. Contrary to popular myths, not everyone lived in constant filth. Many washed regularly when water was available. Monasteries often maintained surprisingly organized medical gardens. Herbal knowledge continued growing through careful observation. While they lacked modern science, they were not completely indifferent to health. History is rarely as simple as legends suggest. Some ideas were mistaken. Others were surprisingly practical. Reality usually existed somewhere between the two. As evening approaches, long shadows begin stretching across the village streets. The marketplace slowly empties. Merchants pack away their remaining goods, animals return to nearby barns. The familiar sound of church bells drifts gently through the cool air once again. Back inside your small home, the fire burns softly. The same chair waits beside the hearth. The same wooden table stands quietly against the wall. Only one thing has changed. The aching tooth is gone. You sip warm broth instead of chewing coarse bread. Your jaw remains tender, but there is hope. Healing has begun. Perhaps tomorrow will feel slightly easier. Perhaps the day after that easier still. Across medieval Europe, countless families experienced evenings exactly like this. Some recovered completely. Others were not so fortunate. The smallest infection could still become a dangerous enemy. Parents watched their children carefully. Husbands cared for wives. Neighbors checked on one another. Communities survived because people rarely faced hardship entirely alone. As darkness slowly returns, stars begin appearing above the quiet rooftops. The cool night breeze carries the scent of distant forests. An owl calls softly somewhere beyond the village fields. You settle beneath thick wool blankets. The pain has become dull instead of sharp. Sleep finally feels possible. But while your story pauses for the night, our journey through medieval dentistry is only growing deeper, because not every painful tooth was removed by an honest barber surgeon. Some were treated by wandering tooth pullers whose performances looked more like public entertainment than medical care. Others relied upon strange remedies involving charms, mysterious powders, burning oils, and ancient superstitions that had survived for generations. Some of these treatments offered surprising comfort. Others created entirely new suffering. And in the next chapter, we will quietly step into that curious world where medicine, folklore, and mystery blended together beneath the watchful eyes of medieval Europe. As another morning slowly unfolds across the medieval countryside, a gentle layer of mist settles over the fields. Dew clings to blades of grass, and the first rays of sunlight paint the rooftops in soft shades of gold. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster announces the beginning of a new day, while the steady toll of a church bell reminds the town that life moves forward, whether one feels ready or not. Your mouth is still tender. The empty space where the aching tooth once rested feels unfamiliar. Each careful sip of warm broth reminds you that healing has begun, although complete comfort remains several days away. For many people, this would have been the end of the story. But not everyone was fortunate enough to reach an experienced barber surgeon. Across medieval Europe, another group of men wandered dusty roads from village to village. They carried no permanent workshop, no familiar storefront, no regular patients. Instead, they traveled wherever crowds gathered: market fairs, harvest festivals, busy crossroads, large religious celebrations. These wandering practitioners became known as tooth pullers. Some possessed years of genuine experience. Others relied more upon confidence than knowledge. To an ordinary villager, telling the difference was nearly impossible. Imagine arriving at a busy summer fair. The air smells of roasted meat, fresh bread, damp straw, and horses. Merchants call loudly to passing customers, displaying colorful fabrics, polished knives, clay pottery, wooden toys, and woven baskets. Musicians play cheerful melodies using simple flutes and drums. Children weave happily between crowded stalls. It feels almost festive. Then another sound rises above the noise. A booming voice, confident, cheerful, impossible to ignore. A wandering tooth puller has arrived. Unlike the quiet barber surgeon working patiently inside his small workshop, this man understands the power of performance. He speaks loudly enough for dozens of people to hear. He jokes with the crowd. He smiles constantly. Sometimes an assistant beats a drum to attract attention. Occasionally, musicians travel alongside him, turning a medical procedure into something resembling public entertainment. To modern ears, it sounds unbelievable. Yet during the Middle Ages, attracting a crowd often meant attracting customers. The larger the audience, the greater the appearance of success. The tooth puller proudly displays his instruments: heavy forceps, curved pelicans, iron hooks. He lifts them high enough for everyone nearby to see. He promises quick relief, painless treatment. Years of experience. Whether those promises reflected reality depended entirely upon the individual standing before the crowd. Some truly were skilled. Others simply mastered the art of persuasion. Imagine watching from the edge of the gathering. A nervous farmer steps forward. His swollen jaw leaves little doubt about the reason for his visit. The tooth puller invites him to sit upon a simple wooden stool placed directly in the marketplace. No private room, no quiet surroundings. Only curious strangers watching every movement. Perhaps dozens, perhaps hundreds. The patient glances nervously around. Leaving now would feel embarrassing, so he remains seated. The tooth puller begins speaking to the audience while preparing his instrument. His confidence never fades. Within moments, the extraction begins. If everything goes well, the damaged tooth comes free quickly. The crowd applauds. The patient, though exhausted, feels grateful. Another satisfied customer encourages others to step forward. Business continues, but not every performance ends so smoothly. Sometimes the wrong tooth is removed. Sometimes the tooth breaks beneath the forceps. Sometimes the patient moves suddenly from pain or fear. Each unexpected moment increases the difficulty of the procedure. Without modern lighting or specialized equipment, correcting mistakes becomes extremely challenging. The audience rarely sees what happens afterward. They simply watch the next demonstration. Reputation travels quickly during the Middle Ages. A successful tooth puller might become famous across several regions. People would wait for his annual return during harvest fairs, believing his skill worth the journey. At the same time, stories of disastrous extractions spread just as rapidly. Neighbors warned one another. Travelers carried tales from village to village. Long before newspapers or the internet, word of mouth served as society's greatest source of information. trust had to be earned. And once lost, it was difficult to regain. As the afternoon sun warms the crowded marketplace, imagine wandering among the stalls yourself. You pass a merchant selling dried herbs gathered from nearby forests. Bundles of sage hang neatly beside lavender. Rosemary fills the air with its pleasant fragrance. Mint leaves dry carefully in woven baskets. These herbs are not sold only for cooking. Many people believe they possess healing qualities. In truth, several actually do. Sage contains natural compounds that may help reduce inflammation. Mint offers a cooling sensation. Cloves, though rare and expensive in parts of Europe, contain substances capable of numbing pain. Medieval people did not understand chemistry, but they observed results. Generation after generation, useful remedies survived because families remembered what seemed to help. Other treatments proved far stranger. One of the most fascinating beliefs involved the mysterious toothworm. For centuries, many cultures imagined that tiny worms burrowed inside painful teeth. A throbbing sensation seemed to support the idea. Without microscopes or knowledge of bacteria, the explanation appeared surprisingly reasonable. If pain seemed to move, perhaps something inside the tooth was moving. To drive away these invisible creatures, countless remedies appeared, some burned fragrant herbs beneath the patient's mouth. The smoke, people believed, would force the worms to leave. Others recommended placing heated seeds near the aching tooth. Certain healers whispered special prayers while performing these treatments. Some patients claimed immediate relief. Modern historians suspect temporary warmth, distraction, or simple coincidence may explain those improvements. The imaginary worm itself, however, never existed. Still, the belief remained remarkably widespread for hundreds of years. It reminds us how people naturally searched for answers using the knowledge available to them. History is filled with sincere attempts to understand a mysterious world. Not every explanation proved correct. Yet curiosity itself continued guiding humanity forward. Nearby, another merchant displays tiny leather pouches containing charms. Some promise protection against fever. Others claim to prevent illness. A few specifically advertise relief from tooth pain. Religious symbols appear beside carefully carved stones and dried plants. Faith and medicine often walked together during medieval life. Very few people saw a clear boundary between physical healing and spiritual comfort. Both seemed equally important. As evening approaches, the busy fair slowly begins to quiet. Merchants count their coins. Children grow sleepy after long hours of excitement. The wandering tooth puller carefully packs away his instruments. Tomorrow he will continue traveling. Another village waits beyond the next hill, another marketplace, another crowd, another collection of aching teeth. His entire livelihood depends upon people experiencing pain. It is a curious profession, one built upon suffering, yet also upon relief. For every frightening story surrounding medieval dentistry, there were countless ordinary people who genuinely felt better after receiving treatment. History rarely fits neatly into simple ideas of good or bad. Reality usually rests somewhere between the two. As you settle more comfortably beneath your blankets, listening to the gentle rhythm of this story, imagine the fairgrounds growing quiet beneath a sky filled with stars. The last campfires flicker softly. Horses rest after long journeys. A cool breeze rustles through nearby trees. The noise of the day slowly fades into peaceful silence. Yet hidden within that silence remains another mystery. For even when the tooth had been removed, even when the wound appeared to heal, people still feared something they could neither see nor fully understand. A silent enemy that drifted invisibly from wound to wound. An enemy that would not be recognized for centuries. And that quiet shadow will lead us into the next chapter of our journey. As the night grows deeper, the medieval fair disappears behind us. The cheerful voices fade into the distance. The last campfire burns low. Travelers wrap themselves in heavy wool blankets beneath wooden wagons, while horses stand quietly in nearby fields, their slow breathing rising into the cool night air like tiny clouds. The stars above medieval Europe look exactly as they do today, bright, silent, unchanging. Yet beneath those familiar stars, people lived in a world filled with dangers they could neither see nor explain. Some dangers announced themselves loudly. Wars, famines, storms, others arrived without warning. Quietly, invisible to every human eye, you have survived the tooth extraction. The worst, you hope, is over. Your jaw still aches, but the sharp pain that haunted you for weeks has finally faded into something more manageable. Neighbors tell you that you were fortunate. The barber surgeon removed the damaged tooth cleanly. The bleeding slowed. You returned home before sunset. Everything seems to be improving. But medieval people understood something from experience, even if they could not explain it. Sometimes. The real danger arrived several days later. The wound begins healing. Then suddenly, your face swells again. A fever appears. The skin grows hot. Your body feels unusually weak. No one understands why. There are no microscopes, no laboratories. No doctors discussing bacteria or infection. Instead, families watch helplessly as an illness seems to appear from nowhere. Today we know that millions of invisible microorganisms surround us every moment of our lives. Most are harmless. Many are helpful. Some are dangerous. Medieval people had no way of seeing this hidden world. To them, illness often felt mysterious, almost as though it drifted through the air like an unseen spirit. Without antibiotics, even a small infection could spread beyond the gums into the jaw, the neck, or the bloodstream. A tooth that had already been removed might continue causing suffering long after it was gone. It is one of history's quiet ironies. The treatment that offered hope sometimes introduced an entirely new danger. Fortunately, not every extraction ended badly. Far from it. The human body has always possessed remarkable healing abilities. Countless medieval patients recovered completely. Healthy immune systems fought infections successfully long before antibiotics existed. People often survived because their own bodies accomplished what medicine could not. Nature became the greatest physician of all. As dawn slowly approaches another medieval morning, imagine walking through the gardens of a monastery. Soft mist hangs above rows of carefully cultivated herbs: lavender, sage, chamomile, yarrow. Monks move quietly between narrow pathways, tending plants that generations before them believed possessed healing qualities. Monasteries became important centers of medical knowledge throughout much of medieval Europe. While many treatments reflected ancient beliefs rather than modern science, monks carefully copied medical texts by hand, preserving valuable knowledge that might otherwise have disappeared forever. Inside monastery libraries, thick handwritten books rested upon wooden shelves. Their pages described illnesses, herbal remedies, dietary advice, and surgical observations gathered across centuries. Every copy required months of patient work. One mistake meant carefully scraping away ink before trying again. Knowledge moved slowly, painstakingly. Yet because of these quiet scribes, countless ancient medical writings survived into later centuries. History often celebrates kings who conquered kingdoms, but sometimes the people who quietly copied books changed the future just as profoundly. As you continue listening, perhaps your breathing has become slower once again. The story asks nothing from you except your imagination. Allow yourself to wander these peaceful monastery gardens. Listen to birds singing gently from nearby trees. Feel the cool morning breeze passing through rows of herbs. Even within an age remembered for hardship, places of remarkable tranquility still existed. Yet outside monastery walls, ordinary villagers continued relying upon local healers: barber surgeons, midwives, herbalists, and wandering practitioners. Medical care looked different in every town. One village might possess an experienced healer whose remedies genuinely eased suffering. Another might depend entirely upon superstition. Luck played an enormous role in determining the care a person received. Perhaps the greatest dark fact about medieval dentistry was not the pain itself. It was uncertainty. Every decision carried unknown consequences. Should the aching tooth remain, or should it be removed? Would the swelling disappear naturally or become life-threatening? Would the practitioner prove skilled or inexperienced? Nobody could know. Modern medicine often provides probabilities, tests, scans, laboratory results. Medieval patients possessed only observation, experience, and hope. Hope became a form of medicine all its own. Families prayed together. Neighbors shared remedies. Communities supported one another during illness. Not every treatment worked, but kindness itself often eased suffering. One fascinating misconception from the Middle Ages involved the belief that pain itself could sometimes be influenced by the movement of heavenly bodies. Certain healers consulted astronomical calendars before recommending treatments. The position of the moon or particular stars occasionally influenced when procedures should occur. To modern science, These connections appear unsupported. Yet during the medieval period, the heavens and the human body seemed deeply connected in ways people sincerely believed. Medicine, religion, astronomy, and philosophy often blended together into one worldview. Separating them would have felt strange. Another quiet truth often surprises modern readers. Not everyone feared barber surgeons. Many communities respected them deeply. When someone successfully relieved unbearable pain, gratitude naturally followed. The same hands that shaved beards also stitched wounds, treated injuries, and saved lives whenever possible. Their knowledge remained limited, but their importance within medieval society was undeniable. History asks us to judge people within the world they actually knew, not the world we know today. Perhaps one barber surgeon made a decision that now seems incorrect, yet without microscopes, without anesthesia, without x-rays, without antibiotics. Would any of us have performed much better? It is an uncomfortable question, and one worth considering. Every generation builds upon the discoveries of those who came before. Future historians may someday look back upon our own medical practices with similar curiosity. They may wonder why we believed certain treatments were effective, or why we overlooked things that later became obvious. Knowledge is always growing, never standing still. As afternoon sunlight filters through medieval windows, imagine a small family gathering for their evening meal. Fresh bread rests beside vegetable stew. A wooden cup passes quietly from hand to hand. Grandparents tell familiar stories while children listen beside the fire. One family member smiles carefully. A missing tooth leaves a small gap. Only weeks earlier, unbearable pain filled every waking hour. Now, there is only quiet relief. That simple moment reminds us of something easily forgotten. Most medieval people were not constantly surrounded by tragedy. They experienced ordinary happiness too: birthdays, harvest celebrations, friendships, marriage, music, laughter, simple evenings spent beside warm fires. History often focuses upon disasters because they are dramatic. Daily life, however, usually unfolded much more gently. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden within tonight's journey. The people of medieval Europe were not so different from us. They worried about their families. They hoped tomorrow would be kinder than yesterday. They feared pain. They searched for healing. They trusted the knowledge available to them, and they endured hardships with remarkable resilience. As darkness settles over the countryside once more, church bells echo softly across distant hills. The marketplace stands empty. The barber surgeon closes his wooden door. His iron instruments rest quietly inside their box until another patient arrives. Somewhere, another child wiggles a loose tooth. Somewhere, another farmer rubs an aching jaw. Somewhere, another traveler begins a long walk toward the nearest village, hoping someone there can offer relief. But before our journey through medieval dentistry comes to its peaceful end, there is one final quiet reflection waiting beside the fire. A reminder that history is not only a collection of kings, battles, and castles. It is also the story of ordinary people who faced extraordinary discomfort and somehow found the strength to greet another sunrise. The fire has burned low now. Only a few glowing embers remain, casting a soft orange light across the quiet room. Outside, the wind moves gently through the trees, carrying with it the distant sound of an owl calling into the darkness. The medieval town has fallen asleep. The marketplace that bustled with voices only hours ago now stands silent. The barber surgeon has locked away his heavy iron instruments. The wandering tooth puller has already begun his journey toward another village beyond the hills. Families rest beneath thick wool blankets, grateful that another ordinary day has come to an end. Some sleep peacefully. Others still cradle an aching jaw, hoping that tomorrow will bring relief. For most of history, people never expected perfect comfort. Instead, they learned to live with uncertainty. They adapted to difficult seasons. They accepted that pain was sometimes part of everyday life. Yet even in those challenging times, they continued planting gardens, baking bread, raising children, sharing stories beside warm fires, and finding small moments of happiness wherever they could. Perhaps that is one of the most comforting lessons history has to offer. Human beings have always been remarkably resilient. Across countless generations, ordinary people have faced illnesses they did not understand, hardships they could not avoid, and fears that seemed impossible to overcome. Still, morning always came. The church bells rang once again. Markets reopened. Neighbors greeted one another. Life quietly continued. As we look back on medieval dentistry today, it is easy to focus only on the frightening tools, the painful extractions, and the strange beliefs that surrounded medicine. Those stories are certainly unforgettable, but they are only part of the picture. Behind every iron forceps was a person hopping to ease another person's suffering. Behind every frightened patient was a family waiting at home. Behind every medical mistake was a world still searching for answers. The people of the Middle Ages did not know about bacteria. They had never seen an X-ray. They had never heard the sound of a modern dental drill. They could not imagine anesthesia, antibiotics, or the quiet comfort of a clean dental clinic. They worked with the knowledge they possessed. And with each generation, that knowledge slowly grew. Small discoveries became larger ones. Observations became experiments. Experiments became science. Science became modern medicine. The comfortable dental visit many of us know today is not the work of a single invention. It is the result of centuries of learning, countless failures, quiet successes, and the determination of people who never stopped asking questions about the human body. History moves slowly, almost like a river. Sometimes it changes course dramatically. More often, it flows forward one small step at a time. Tonight, we walked beside one small part of that long journey. We wandered through misty medieval streets. We sat in the wooden chair of a barber surgeon. We listened to the bustling sounds of market fairs where wandering tooth pullers earned their living. We explored old herbal remedies, ancient beliefs, quiet monastery gardens, and the hidden dangers that medieval people faced every single day. And perhaps, along the way, we discovered that the people who lived hundreds of years ago were not as different from us as they sometimes seem. They laughed, they worried, they hoped, they loved their families, they searched for healing. And above all, they looked toward tomorrow with quiet optimism. As your own evening grows quieter, allow your breathing to slow once more. Feel the warmth of your blanket. Notice how peaceful the room around you has become. If your eyes are already beginning to close, simply let them. There is nowhere else you need to be. Nothing else you need to do, just rest. Let the distant church bells fade into silence. Let the marketplace disappear beneath the stars. Let the cool medieval breeze drift softly through quiet streets where every window now glows with the gentle light of a single candle. Our journey through history ends here for tonight. But there are still countless forgotten stories waiting patiently in the shadows. Stories of lost kingdoms, ancient travelers, mysterious castles, remarkable ordinary people, and the quiet moments that history books so often leave behind. If you enjoyed spending this peaceful evening exploring the past with me, I'd love for you to subscribe to Sleepy History and join our growing community of curious night travelers. If this story helped you relax, you can also leave a gentle like or share it with someone who enjoys calm history before bed. Every week, we'll take another slow journey into the forgotten corners of the past, discovering what everyday life was really like for the people who came before us. Until then, thank you for spending part of your evening with me. I truly appreciate your company. Sleep well, dream peacefully. And I'll be here, waiting to share another quiet story with you very soon. Good night, and goodbye for now.